Right, good evening and welcome to the webinar. Tonight's webinar is a property investing educational webinar. Tonight's topic, where is the best location to be investing and why? My name is Garth Davis and I am the founder and CEO of Property Powerhouse. I've been working in the investment property advisory industry for 20 years now, and I love my work and I love helping mum and dad investors to buy investment properties and create wealth through investing in property. I do have another three presenters this evening, so I'm going to ask them to just unmute themselves and turn their cameras on if they're there. Samara, we just see. So Jamie, if you'd just like to say good evening and welcome, and whereabouts, what's the name of your business and where are you this evening?
Thanks, Garth. Jamie from Empire, and I'm in Perth.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to go to Samara Bedwell. Where are you, Samara, and what's the name of your business?
Hi, I'm Samara Bedwell. I'm the Managing Director of Macwell Property, and we're located in Brisbane.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, guys. And Punit Fernandez is one of our other presenters this evening. Whereabouts are you based, Punit?
Hi, Garth. Good evening, everyone. I'm Punit Fernandez, and I'm based in Melbourne.
Okay, fantastic. So we've got some of us from Perth. I'm joining from Perth this evening, from Brisbane, and from also from Melbourne. So that is fantastic. I'm just going to change my screen, and we can get the show on the road. All right. So just before we get moving tonight, obviously a disclaimer that the information tonight is educational on. It's educational and general in nature. This is nothing specific to any of the anyone individually here this evening. It's just general and for general advice and education. Property Powerhouse, well, what do? We are the experts in investment property, and by providing education, support and experience, Property Powerhouse enables mum and dad investors to buy properties all around Australia, building up their wealth and enabling them to retire debt-free on their own home and create multiple rental income streams. So that's what we do every day, all day at Property Powerhouse. All right, so why use Property Powerhouse? What's our value proposition to a potential investor? Well, first of all, we have an Australia-wide footprint, so we don't just property research in one capital city or one area. We are researching Australia-wide. We help buyers through all the stages. So we help them with the pre-purchase stage, which is understanding the strategy, how much their borrowing capacity is. So we understand how much they can spend, what's best where to spend that, what's important to them. Are they chasing the capital growth? Does the property need to be cash flow neutral? Do they need to buy for tax savings? Why are the reasons they're buying that investment property? So we help them really around the education of why and where and how. We also help them through the whole purchasing stage. So once we've identified the property, we then help them with the purchasing. So we help them create a really good team around them. So a really good settlement property lawyer who can help with the contracts, make sure they've got a really good finance broker who's absolutely imperative. We'll help them with getting that property through to the settlement, including a building inspector, including the insurances, and also helping them with a really good property manager to find tenants, which we'll explain now. So helping them all the way, and also post settlement. So again, a really good value add to the client is that we don't just operate like a normal real estate agent who would hand over the keys and say, good luck, and phone me when you want to sell it. We will remain a support person as long as they own the property. And again, a beautiful thing is we do that at no cost to you. So we're not like a buyer's agent. You might have heard about buyer's agents who charge a fee. Some of those fees can be 15,000. They could be as much as 25 or 30,000, and they go and source the property for you. So yes, we do earn an income. We don't work for free, but we get paid a marketing fee from the vendor. The vendor is a seller. Okay, so whether it's a builder, developer, or someone who owns the property, that we do get paid a fee from them. It comes out of their profit. So if they build a developer, they'll have a budget in there for marketing, and whether they're going to use a local real estate agent to sell the property or use us. The great thing for point of difference with us is that we've got a nationwide access of investors. So we've got a database of investors Australia-wide. That's a big attraction to them. And also they don't have to spend any additional money on marketing. If we don't sell the property, they don't pay us anything. And sometimes they can, just de-risk their project by selling a couple, maybe they're 2 to 3 months off from completion. So we're also of interest to builders, developers for sure. All right, it comes out of their profits, and so the fee that we get paid, the marketing fee, it's not added on top. And how can we substantiate that? Well, the properties need to settle on contract price, and the valuers don't control the valuers. The valuers are sent out by the bank. And the properties need to settle on contract price. Otherwise, the settlement will not proceed. If we've wasted everybody's time, we wasted your time as the buyer, my time as the property consultant and researcher. We wasted the time of everybody, the finance broker. So we definitely don't want to do that. So just recapping, we can help you through all the stages. We help you with the pre-purchase, during the purchase, and brilliantly, for as long as you own the property, you always have a support person with you. It doesn't cost you. It's paid for by the vendor. So we believe we offer a fantastic value add proposition for you. Right. Let's have a look at what we got here. So the steps, the important steps for investing. I think it's really important we just dumb down the process. There's a process to property investing and getting it right. And it's about a process. This is not you're buying your own home and it's emotional. With investing, you've got to keep to the processes. You've got to invest with your head and not your heart. So let's have a look at what that looks like. The very first step with investing in property, whether you're actually a new investor or you've been investing for a while, is around the education. You've got to understand the market. You've got to understand the general dynamics. So read books, listen to videos, attend seminars, come on events like this, educational webinars to listen. And ultimately, you're going to get general knowledge of what's going on in the market. Then there are some specific different pathways to take, whether you want to buy new properties, whether you want to buy established properties, whether you buy cash flow positive properties, whether you buy cash flow neutral properties, whether you buy all the properties in one state or you spread them around. So there's different strategies, buying new versus established, residential versus commercial, buying in your own name versus self-managed super fund. So ultimately, there's going to be a path you'll need to take. So the thing is, you need to get educated, but before you take a step, you're going to need to be comfortable that this is the direction. And what we do at Property Powerhouse, we're keen on the new builds because of the depreciation that you can get as an investor. In Australia, it works wonderfully. You get the massive depreciation. You also get peace of mind structurally that the property has a structural warranty. It also has all the warranties for the plant and equipment, your air cons, your stoves, the dishwasher, everything's under warranty. If it breaks, it can be replaced under warranty. So education is the very most important thing. The second most important thing, and probably the most important thing of your whole thing, is having a really good finance broker partner. A finance broker, again, works at no cost to you. They get paid by the bank. If it doesn't get to settlement, they don't get paid. So they work long hours, they work weekends, they'll come and visit you, but find a broker that you know, like, or trust. If you don't know somebody, we'd be more than happy to recommend 1, 2, or 3 people, and you can choose who you want to work with. But understanding your finance, having a look, are you running as efficiently as possible on your current structure? If you have a loan, do you have the best loan for you? Has the bank been, just on passing interest rates without actually doing the best deal for you? So a finance broker will be looking at a health check, checking your finances. If you have a personal loan, is it structured correctly? Can you be structuring it differently? Your credit card. So talk to the broker. And importantly, from where I can help you in Property Powerhouse is understanding your purchasing capacity. How much can you purchase for? What's your loan to value ratio? Once we understand that, and we've got your strategy, we've got your finance capacity, then it's about trying to find the right property for what you're trying to do. All right. So there's different ways, as I said, to become wealthy through property in Australia. And, again, we have a certain strategy which we think is really low risk: capital cities, new builds, long-term rentals, 12-month rentals. So we have a really low risk strategy that works well, but there are different strategies out there. But finding the right property for the strategy that you're looking for. Then property process. So it's really important to get a good team around you. Unless you're doing this every single day, like I'm doing, or like you would have seen Samara and Jamie, the other two main presenters this evening, unless you're doing this every day, it's something new to you, and you're bound to not. It's one of those things, you don't know what you don't know. So you may think you know a lot, but build a team around you. Just like a footy team, a rugby team, a soccer team, have a good team around you. And in this team, we want a very good finance broker. We want a really good property lawyer to help with the settlement. We need a good property manager. We need a good building inspector. We need good insurance, good depreciation, your property expert, as I say. So you need a great team that you can lean on, because it's unlikely you can do this all on your own. You might be lucky and be like the 5% that might be lucky and fluke it on your own. But otherwise, you'll be part of the 95% that buy the wrong property in the wrong place with the wrong finance, with the wrong cash flow, and you end up bailing out and never buying a second property. We want you to get you through to the next step is to get you through to a smooth settlement process, and then once the property is settled, help you get a quality tenant. So using people like Jamie and Samara to do real quality testing. Real quality control, make sure we get you a good tenant that's going to be there looking after your property, but also paying on time every time. Once the property settles, we have a tenant, then it's important to get your depreciation schedule. That's for your tax savings, to make sure that this property is working efficiently and within all the tax rules. So you tax minimizing, but within all the rules of with investing and working within the rules of the government and the ATO. Long term, if you can hold a property for 15 to 20 years, you're going to do really well. Unfortunately, what happens is a large percentage of investors don't buy the right property, or don't get the right finance, or don't get the right cash flow, and they end up selling after years 3, 4, or 5. And in a lot of cases, they may break even if they're lucky, but probably going to lose. So they've gone in with the right intention, but again, they didn't have the team, they didn't have the education, and they sort of went half blind, thinking they know what they're doing, and they just they didn't get it right, and they had to sell, and they can't hold. If you can hold a property for 15 to 20 years, you're going to do exceptionally well, and if you plan to hold it that long as well, you're going to do well. Once you have a property, it might gain in some equity within 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But the whole idea then is you can grab that equity, which is the difference between the value of the property and the mortgage, and you working with your broker, talking to them all the time, your finance broker, is to pull down an equity release and get hold of some of that profit, that equity, and then use that to put down a deposit on your next property. If you want to build a portfolio, no one's going to force you to do that. But as you've been through the first process, you'll find it gets easier, and you start to understand, like, okay, if I had the second property or third or fourth or fifth property, I can have more exposure in the property market, which will allow me to get more capital growth. And then it goes back to the process. So back to the top of the list, which is education and finance. And those two at the top are ongoing. You've got, even though you get educated, you buy your first property, it doesn't mean you stop. The market is ever changing. It is fluid. There's different things happening with tax. There's different things happening with the rental space. There's different things. There's different markets. The property cycles in Australia work in different markets, different cycles. So when Sydney and Melbourne are going really well, probably find Perth and Brisbane are not, for example. So they work in different cycles. So you've got to keep learning. You've got to stay involved. You've got to stay educated. But the main thing here is having a great team around you. So let's have a look at what we're talking about. And this is all what's happening at the moment. It's a busy time. There's a lot of noise out there at the moment for an investor. And you've got to stay focused. So there's always going to be stuff going on in the media, and you're hearing things. But yes, there's talk of potential rental freezes. There's potential for high interest rates. The good thing was, at least yesterday we had the interest rates of third month on hold. So it does look like we've peaked on the interest rate cycle, which is really good, just having some certainty. Immigration is strong into Australia, lots of students coming in. So basically what the underlying message is, demand is really, really strong for buying and for also renting, and supply is really, really tight. So we're in this position at the moment, which is we feel for people buying and I feel for people that are renting. All right, it's a very difficult market, But for the landlord, if you've got the property owner, if you've got an investment property or two, this is your chance to do really well. And it comes in cycles. There'll be times when you don't make money, and there'll be times when your rent doesn't go up, and there'll be times when you may have to drop the rent. But this is not of your doing. This isn't, you've got to run this as a business. If you can achieve more rent, you know, your interest rates have gone up 12%. So it's a cost of doing business. You've got to treat this like a business. And, you know, if you can get the extra rent, you must take it. You're providing a rental property to the rental market. So you're doing enough good to the industry. And, you know, if your client needs things fixed, then be a responsible landlord and get things fixed as quick as you can. And then you'll find your tenant will stay. Right, let's have a look here. So I've got just 5 more minutes. I want to run through what's actually happening in the market here. So we've actually, if you see at the bottom here, we've had 6 consecutive months of increase. So the property, if we take a median across the whole country, we've had 6 months of consecutive rises. So the property market is performing exceptionally well under high interest rates, under high inflation, and it's driven by this lack of supply and very strong demand. More people coming in, international migrants, skilled migrants, more students. So this is a really important table that comes out from CoreLogic. They're the residential data specialists. They carry all the data, and they run it, they release it on the first day of every month. You'd see here on the 1st of September. And this was for data to the end of August. And what we can see on the right-hand side is the median values. This is for all dwellings, houses and apartments. So generally, we know houses are more expensive and apartments are less expensive. So this is the median with all of them included. Left-hand side is the capital cities. And these are the 3 main charts that I want us to have a look at. So under the annual chart, we can see here that Perth has actually been the best performing capital city for the last 12 months. It's had a median growth of 4.5%. Some of them are still in the negatives because they took a little bit of a hit after all the cheap money started to dry up. We know we had very low interest rates. So some of them went backwards. There were price drops. But Perth has performed exceptionally well and continues to perform well. In the last quarter, we can see that Brisbane has done a bit of a U-turn there, performing really well on the back of low stock, strong demand, and still that undercurrent of the Olympic Games in 2032. So a lot of people moving to Brisbane because, again, the property price there, the median, is still cheaper than Melbourne and Sydney. And people moving there for lifestyle, the weather, for jobs, and and a lot of people moving up there. And again, Brisbane was the standout for the month. Can't read so much into the monthly figures because it's very volatile. We might have had a lot of expensive sales or cheaper sales in that month, but it'll generally give you a bit of a trend line. Sydney is performing well, as we can see there, but again, off a very high base. So remembering, as an investor, your borrowing capacity determines where you go. You know, if you've got 600,000 as a borrowing capacity, you're going to be a bit limited, or you're going to be very limited in Sydney and in Melbourne. You could probably still get in for a townhouse in Brisbane, but you know, you're probably going to be in that Perth and Adelaide type of property environment, which are performing well as well. Let's go just put into different ways. Same data. We can see here that Perth, WA, best performing for annual change. You can see Tasmania taking a big hit there. Canberra also negative. That's over the year. The next I'll jump one there. Over the quarterly, we can see again, as I mentioned just now, Brisbane and Queensland doing particularly well on the quarter. So as New South Wales responded well. South Australia, Western Australia performing very well as well. In the market, this was in today's paper here in the Western Australia, I think about page 3. We've just hit a record for the houses, median rental price per week. I'm not going to take Jamie's thunder, but I thought I would share that with you. So not only are prices really strong in the market, property selling quickly and properties renting quickly, but they're actually now at record levels of rental. So from an investor, that should be grabbing your attention. Let's have a look at yields. Now, yields is basically the rent versus the value of the property. And this is like a rule of thumb, just to about 5.2% is if you had a property that you were buying at $500,000 and your rent was $500 a week. That would be a 5.2%. So dollar for dollar, 500,000 equals $500 a week. So what we can see here is that some of the best performing is Darwin, That's driven a lot on the back of unit renting. Perth's performing the best rental market, and in fact, the properties we would be recommending Perth, we can get you close to 6%. Brisbane's also quite strong, 4.2. We can get you around 5% yields with the properties that we're looking for. But it's important to see, and the message here is that the yields are really low in Melbourne and Sydney. And why that's important is that while you're paying interest rates of around about 6.4% for an investor, you know, you've got to manage the cash flow of the property. We're buying it for capital growth, but you've got to understand the cash flow, and you've got to be able to afford the property. And the rental yields are very good in Perth, Adelaide, and Brisbane, and we can outscore on what's been reflected here. But Sydney and Melbourne, you can see if your interest rate is 6% and these are your yields, you know, you're going to be very negative cash flow in Melbourne or Sydney. All right, one of my last slides, what's happening with interest rates? Have we reached the peak? Well, as I said, we've just stabilized now the last 3 months when Reserve Bank said yesterday, unchanged for the third month consistently. So what's happening now is we're starting to see it actually starting to bite now. Consumer spending is coming down. Inflation is starting to stabilize. It's still a little bit high, but starting to come down. Company profits are starting to feel the squeeze also a little bit. So we think the interest rates have moved well, and in the sense of, you know, controlling the inflation, and but still taking a bit of time for the data and that to flow through. So interest only for investor, if you were to go and get a loan, 80% loan to value ratio, interest only. The variable rate is around about 6.44%. As you can see here, this is information, thank you to Mark Krug of House and Home Loans, provided today. So it's current data. So the question would be, should we go in fixed rates? Well, as you can see, the fixed rate for 1 year, you're paying higher. 2 years is even higher. And 3 years, it kind of comes back to where we are as a variable. So if you still believe interest rates are going to go up, which we don't think, and that's not what's been reflective at the moment, you would fix. But otherwise, if you stayed variable, you give yourself flexibility and also the opportunity for potential interest rates to come down. So that's a little grab of what's going on in the market. I do want to introduce our next speaker, and that speaker I'd like to introduce Samara Bedwell. So Samara is the Managing Director of Macwell Property in Brisbane. I've known Samara a long time. She's a great operator, the best property management business in Queensland. Samara is the Managing Director of Macwell Property Management and has 20 years experience in the industry. During her career, she has won many national and state industry awards. She is highly regarded as an industry expert in Queensland, and she's written several key articles for industry publications and newspapers, and contracts to the Real Estate Institute of Queensland as a trainer and consultant. She is known for exceeding expectations in customer service and believes in employing staff with a positive, hardworking attitude. Good evening, Samara.
Thank you, Gav. Wow, what an introduction. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's been a little while since we've put one of these on, so I'll just get you to skip through to the slides, because what I'll do tonight is I'm going to sort of break it down into a couple of sections. So if you want to go to the next one, Garth, that'd be great. Garth's going to drive for me. No, back one. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are and why we do what we do. As Garth has mentioned, we're going to look at the Queensland vacancy rates. We've taken a lot of our information tonight through realestate.com. Here in Queensland, a lot of our information does come from realestate.com and RP Data CoreLogic. I know in the southern states that Domain is probably your leading platform for that, but it is different in Queensland. Then we're going to have a look at rental increases and the yields that we're seeing here. Then we're going to have a look at our stock levels, days on market, and you know what's making those days on market shorter than usual. I'm going to give you a couple of little investor successes that we've had here, and hopefully if you've got any questions, you might be able to put them in the chat box as well. So Garth, I'll get you to skip on over to the next one. I'll tell you a little bit about us.
Oops. Sorry.
That's okay. So I have been doing this for over 20 years, and I have had Macwell Property now for the last 8 years. Time flies when you're having fun. But why I do what I do is I believe that every landlord wants a property that grows in value, is well maintained, and is rented to the right tenants with minimal hassle. At Macwell, we know the secret is to treat each investment property as a business. We consider all decisions with your long-term return and risk management top of mind, so you can focus on what's important to you. And so you can then watch your nest egg grow and know it is being well looked after. I've been guilty of being an investor. I started investing at 18, I'm now 42. And I've made a couple of emotional decisions that didn't fare me well. So I've learned from my experiences, the experiences that I've had with my clients over the last 22 years. And we do believe that a business mindset, when you approach any investment, whether it's been a house you've lived in and converted to a rental, is still the best way to go, and we'll help you do that. So just over to the next slide, if you don't mind. So we're going to start with the vacancy rates, and Garth has alluded to some of this. We've got the lowest vacancy rates that we've ever seen in history. So a good average vacancy rate or a healthy vacancy rate is around 2 or 3%. Right now, we've got a national vacancy rate, or as of July, of 1.43%. Now, that's what Tim Lawless, a property expert, has expressed in terms of national vacancy rates. We're looking at Brisbane, and I'm particularly going to talk about the north side because that's actually where our hot property is at the moment. The average on the north side is 0.09% vacancy. So that's extremely tight. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about later on about what's happening with these vacancy rates and where the tenants are coming from and the quality and calibre of tenants and how this can happen for you. So I'll get you to move on to the next slide, Garth, if that's all right. If we look at rental increases and yields, so we are trying to maintain tenancies. When you have a supply versus demand situation where the demand outweighs the supply, it puts a lot of pressure and, of course, increases the rents. And that's a good thing considering that mortgages and interest rates have gone up. So this is very uncommon to have interest rates and mortgages and rents going up together. It's usually one way or the other. So national rental increases were up by around that 9%, when the averages on the previous decade were around 3.2%. So you can see that we've sort of tripled in regards to our national rental increases. We looked at the Brisbane average and we broke it down into houses and units. And you can see that in Brisbane, there was a 6.9% annual change, whilst units reported a 15.4% change. Now, there is a little reason for that. Prior to COVID, we had probably what we called an oversupply of the unit product here in Brisbane. That has certainly been eaten up now with the migration, and hence why the that average is now changed and the increase is up by 15.4% because of the demand. So then if we have a look at the yields, we can see that, sorry, I'm just getting myself in order here. We can see that on average yields for Brisbane are at 4.2%. And this is due to housing values continuing to rise as rental growth is easing. Garth did state that some of the product and properties that he's able to get his hands on are at 6%, which is fantastic. We generally do see that most of our clients are sitting around that 4.5 to 5.5 with yield. And that's, again, a reasonably healthy or well accepted yield. Garth, I'll get you to move on to the next slide, if that's okay. Rental stock is down. Why is it down? Because dwelling approvals are still trending lower. We find every capital city this is happening to, but Brisbane has recorded a massive reduction in the total rental listings over the last month. Why? Because some some of our longer term investors are realising their capital growth and have cashed out, and they're selling to owner occupiers. Now, a lot of people have said to me, but that's fantastic. That means we're taking tenants out of the tenant pool and they're becoming owner occupiers. That's not the data that we're seeing. What we're seeing is that the people that are buying these homes as owner occupiers are interstate migrators, because they can still realise the great value that we have here in beautiful sunny Queensland, and it was a stunning day today, by the way. So they're not selling to our tenants. A lot of tenants are not able, or we're finding they're long-term tenants, they're not in a position to go out and buy their own property. There's been a few fire sales because of interest rates and people investing with good intentions, but probably not getting the correct education, not having the correct loan structures, all the things that Garth sort of talked to about in regards to the services that he provides. So we've seen a couple of those. And again, those dwellings have been selling to owner occupiers that are coming from interstate where they see good values. The dwelling approvals have just created so much pressure on tenants, and we understand that it's, you know, been a tough time for landlords with interest rates rising, you know, where we've got to ride through these storms as landlords and investors and hold on, because there will be times when interest rates are lower and we're making good. But it is putting a lot of pressure, and the rent increases are becoming quite phenomenal. I'll get you now to move over to the next slide, Garth, if that's all right. So I've got a couple of investor successes, or and this is really focusing on the north side and on rental increases, because that's where we're seeing what we're trying to do. Every time you change over a tenant, typically can be a costly experience. To find a new tenant in Queensland, you're typically up for a letting fee, and that can be anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks worth of rent plus GST. On average, the average days on market are around that 14% at the moment, 14 days, sorry. So there's potentially another 2 weeks turnover there. Plus you could be up for advertising costs, photography, that sort of stuff. So you could actually be losing around that 6 weeks worth of rent. So what we are trying to do is focus on how we can maintain really good tenants, maximise our landlord's investment return, by keeping those good tenants in place. So we had Aqua Street in Burpengary. The rental increase was, the rental amount achieved previously was $5.30 per week. We were able to achieve a rental increase to $5.80, and this maintained really, really good tenants. Had they have needed to move out, or we needed to move them on, we would have potentially gone back to market at maybe $5.95. So, you know, for $10 or $15, it's not worth that monthly cost. So we see that as a goodwill gesture for tenants and landlords. It's a way of them showing respect to each other and hopefully keeping people long term and keeping our landlord costs down. We then have Meadow Boulevard, Strathpine. Now I love this one. We've got a lady in here who is probably one of our most desirable tenants. She resides in the property on her own. It is like a display home. She often, you know, she's like a little old nana, and she talks to us regularly, but not without causing delay or dramas, and not complaining. She's just a fabulous woman. Her rental increase went from $440 to $500. Now, the owner was happy in that regard to take a $20 a week, because if we'd have gone back to market for that style of property, it would have achieved about a $520 a week return. Strathpine is one of our most desirable areas. So there's a nice array of different styles of properties in there, and Strathpine is doing very, very good at the moment, and probably has done over the last 2 years. Greens Road at Griffin, we went with a rental increase here from $595 to $610. This tenant unfortunately wasn't able to hold on. They were already probably paying on the higher side of rent with their previous lot of rent. So the push has pushed them outside of their affordability bracket. But unfortunately, that means that they have to leave the area. We did relet it. We had 9 days on market and we achieved 530 for that landlord with really good quality tenants again. And again, it's about those quality tenants. Could we have let it quicker? We had a lot of applications on day 3, but they weren't quite the quality that we were looking for. So we held out and we had someone move in on day 9. Look, I've got a couple of little testimonials. I'm not going to read them. The top one here is one that came in from a long-term client of mine. He was with me for 10 years, so he actually came with me over to Macwell. He appreciated the seamlessness from build right through to looking after his management, and he was interstate client, and we do have a lot of interstate clients. Down below, you'll see Alyssa. She's my general manager of property management. She's a very key person in my business. Her communication with tenants and landlords is admirable. And you can see this reference here is actually from a tenant just saying that these people had been renting for many, many years and they'd never come across a company so professional, and dealing with us was a breeze. And, you know, it's not one-sided. As investors, we must remember that without tenants, we don't have a purpose. We're supplying housing. It's good for the economy, but we must be fair and reasonable. So I'll just get you to skip over to the next slide as well. So I'm going to do a little bit of a wrap up here. Is there a housing crisis? This is what I've been getting asked a lot. Yes, there is. But is it as we know it? Is it as the media has us to believe? We are definitely short on stock. You can see that by the vacancy rates and the data that we have here. The problem is that we have a rental crisis that has affected now the most vulnerable people in our state. So whilst the low supply is now pushing a lot of our good term tenants into hardship and things like that, it's not as dire as the media would have you believe in terms of good quality tenants. So I'll give you an example. We will go out to a rental property that's up for rent and we might have 20 people registered to inspect that property. From that 20 people, 10 people will actually come and inspect it. So 10 may have found something else or just not been interested on the day. From that 10, we'll get 6 applications, but we will likely only present 2 applications to our landlords. So we know that there's, you know, 6 or 10 people that need that one house, but only 2 of them are of calibre or quality. So what we have here is an issue that the state government really needs to do something for more of those vulnerable, because we have tenants, and why I say they're not suitable, they're not the calibre we're looking for, they don't have the affordability. And we can't be putting people into your properties that can't pay your rent. Has homelessness increased? Sadly, it has. I don't know whether in your backyards you're seeing this firsthand, but day on day we are seeing more people living in cars, sleeping in parks, relying on the benefits and graces of some of our beautiful charities. We just had an incident, and it was easy covered, but an incident in the area of Pimpama where our tenants vacated. These people had been watching. They were clever enough to see that the property was up for rent. They watched for the tenant to lock up the property, and they actually broke into the property without causing damage. So there's a few little tips and tricks. I won't go into that in case we've got any criminal masterminds watching tonight. But they broke into the property and were sleeping in the property over the weekend until we got there to do our vacate on the Monday morning. Now, they had not damaged the property. They were purely seeking shelter. We called the police. The police couldn't get there. I attended. They moved on without problems. These people were just not able to afford to live in that area anymore, but they still had, you know, connections to the area. So they were literally house jumping until they could find something. So it's very sad. We do need more properties. If we get more housing, that will reduce this. It'll bring rental prices back a little bit, and hopefully the interest rates will ease as well. And that's what we're hoping for as well. Is it more aggressive in the marketplace? Oh God, yes. And what we are seeing is that a lot of property managers and professionals and tradespeople are getting out of the industries. So in Queensland, we had an exit of up to 30% of our property managers over the last 2 years because of the pressures and the stress in the marketplace and the changes of legislations, but I'll talk to you about that in just a second. It's not for the faint-hearted. Property management has never been for the faint-hearted. And whilst this is my profession, unless you are skilled and you have got experience with managing your own investment properties, I do not recommend that you be a DIY investor, landlord. There is a lot that can go wrong. You have a third party in your property. You want to be protected along the way. And when times are tough for you, they might be tough for the tenant as well. You want to make sure you're maintaining your insurances. We can't sleep with your tenants, but we want to make sure that we see all those trigger points so we can act very quickly and very promptly. And if you're doing it yourself and you might be tied up with your own work, you might miss one of those alarm bells. The last, and I'll wrap up on this, have the new legislations made it not worth being an investor here in Queensland? Absolutely not. As Garth said in the opening, I contract to the REIQ, so I get to see firsthand some of these bill proposals or these draft legislations. We have one of the strongest REI, so Real Estate Institutes, led by Antonia Mercarella. So when something silly is pushed, she gets in a round table with our state legislators and she fights back and she fights hard. And I'm proud to be a part of that association with them. But a lot of the legislations that are made or trying to be passed are because of the minority. And when I look at them, quite often we here at Macquarie have actually operated in accordance prior to the legislations being passed, because it was common sense and common courtesy to both parties, both landlords and tenants. So we haven't actually felt a huge impact of the legislations. The media does have it beat up that it's very tenant swayed, and it's not. When we read the legislation finally, it does say that in lots of places, the landlord still has reasonable reasons to decline a pet or to decline any sort of upgrades to the properties and things like that. Probably the worst one that's happened in recent times is the changing of rent increases to annually. So we no longer can increase a rent at 6 months, even if the tenant agrees to it. That would be contracting outside of the Act. So we're finding now we are doing 12-month leases and not really wavering from that. And that's setting the rent tone for the next 12 months, and that's how it has to be. So I'll get you to click through to the next slide, Garth. But overall, I still invest in Queensland. I still believe that this is a beautiful location. We are a real lifestyle location. There's so much on offer. There's so much happening in terms of development around our central city. And as Garth said, we've got the Olympic Games in 2033. If you come and have a drive through, you can see what's happening. We just need our state to get on board a little bit quicker, and we will be certainly one to compete with some of the major capital cities of the world, I believe.
Right, fantastic. Thank you very much, Samara. Always wonderful to hear what's happening there in Brisbane, and you keep up your great work. Please, everyone listening in tonight, there is a Q&A little section. If you look on, there should be a bar. If you move your mouse, you should find a little bar where you can Q&A. So please feel free to ask any questions in there. I'm going to move to our next presenter, Punit Fernandes. So Punit, if you can just unmute yourself, and I'd just like to welcome you. You're based in Melbourne. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man, and how was your experience with Property Powerhouse been?
Sure, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, for this wonderful opportunity. Hi, guys. My name is Punit Fernandes. I'm from Melbourne. This was my first time investing with Property Powerhouse, and it's been one of the best experience I've ever had. Garth has been super supportive. He guides through every process, every procedure, whatever you do, any question you have, even if it's a small silly question, he will answer it for you. And the best thing is, even if you send him an email, he will reply back straight to you. So my experience with Property Powerhouse has been phenomenal. And I would just like to give a little overview that when I signed up the property with to buy in Queensland, my property was ready, and then Garth recommended me to Mackwell Properties, and Samara from Mackwell Property. She did the handover for me, which was very smooth and very fantastic. It literally felt that I was in Victoria, but I actually felt that I was in Queensland myself, taking the handover from there. It was so smooth, so nice, so easy. And my property was on lease, advertised in the morning, and by afternoon it was already on lease. So I don't know what magic they do at Mackwell Properties, but I must say, both Property Powerhouse and Mackwell Properties have done a phenomenal job. I'm really happy. I'm very satisfied. And if I ever buy another investment property, there is no other company thing apart from Property Powerhouse for me and Mackwell Properties if I go in Queensland.
Well, that's fantastic. We really appreciate your kind words. Whereabouts did you buy your property? Roughly what did it cost? And has it gone up in value? Has it gone up in rent?
Sure. My property is in Ripley, and after the purchase price was 440, but after a year I did a valuation of my property and it turned out to be 620. So it's been a phenomenal growth for me, and I'm really happy with it.
Right, so about 180K equity and
Yes.
under 2 years, so you've done really well. What about the rent? So the advertised rent, or the rent that we cautiously suggested for you when you were purchasing. So we always like to be conservative. The rent that we sort of said you'd get versus the rent that you got, did you get more rent than what we had anticipated for you?
Look, in terms of rental, what you anticipated at the start, because considering the interest rates were very low, so property was in positive gearing. But now, since interest rates have gone up, so I'm kind of breaking it even.
That's good. And using the negative gearing and hopefully the depreciation schedule to help make that property a cash flow neutral. So
Absolutely. There has been a really great tax saving as well. When I did my tax return, there has been a few dollars back in my pocket as well, which was really good. And it sort of helps you, know who doesn't like a bit of extra money in their pocket. So,
Now, well, Puna, thank you so much for your kind words, and appreciate you having you as a client, and we'll keep supporting you, phoning you every 3 months, every 6 months, make sure things are ticking along well. So thank you for your kind words, Puna. I'm now going to thank you so much. I'm going to introduce our next speaker this evening. So that's Jamie Horner. I'll just get Jamie to come off, unmute herself, and like to introduce her. So Jamie is a director at Empire Property Management here in Perth. How do you become a long-term successful investor? One asks Jamie, and that is ready for a life of. How do you become a successful investor that's ready for a life of relaxation? As she'll say, it's all about the team. You keep hearing about the team tonight. Well, she's a team player. Jamie has helped more than 1,500 owners for more than 20 years acquire, build, and hold their property empire through investor-focused property and strata management strategies. With a master's in property, Bachelor of Commerce, and diploma in management with real estate as her core subject, Jamie holds a wealth of knowledge and manages the Real Estate Institute of Western Australia's property management team of the year at Empire. So they're a award-winning, they had award-winning team for their property management. So good evening, Jamie.
Oh, thank you, Garth. That was very lovely for the introduction. Garth, I'm going to save us a lot of time. I'm going to say that I'm just going to duplicate Samara's actual presentation, and it's almost like they are mirroring. So thank you to everyone. I know it's obviously late at night, and I'm going to be short, sharp, and sweet and get to the point. I do have a love of property, and it's a very, very odd one. I suppose it's come from me, for my family. So, Garth and I were just chatting today prior about another property that's just about to settle. And I look at property in the way that, my parents migrated here. They always remind me that they migrated here with $80 and that we did struggle growing up. So Something that I was absolutely grateful for, though, was that my mum fell into real estate. Their qualifications from the country that they came from weren't recognised. So she fell into real estate. You know, dad obviously fell into other things as well. But it just happened to be that from my mum's love of real estate, we bought, I would probably say, Garth, unfortunately, the worst properties in Perth. And I don't mean the worst, but my parents always loved land. So I would always, with their poor English from a young age, sort of manage the Caddyshack, which meant that from a very young age, my brother stepped away from it. There was leases to sign, there was rents to collect, and all those sort of things. I love property purely for the fact that it has allowed my parents to make different decisions in life. It's changed the way that they came into you know, I suppose from being, you know, hardworking migrants to being quite comfortable, but also to along that journey, I mean, which includes things from patching walls and painting and all those sort of things. It's taught me a lot about the fact that for them, property was quite personal. Every little expense meant a lot to them, which made me go away from property for a long time. So, like Samara, I try now to look at the property from a business sort of investment perspective, but I still understand why it's so important to our owners. So, Garth, let's get straight into the Perth rental market update. We also spend a lot of time in our real estate institute in WA. We have a very strong institute, and exactly as Samara said, we mirror Brisbane in a great way. So something that you can see here is that we didn't have great times from 2015 all the way to 2020. Property markets always have a bit of a 12-month lag in rental, and you're going to see it because you sign 12-month leases. So the reality doesn't hit till a little bit later. If you have a look at Perth, we went a little bit crazy in 2020. Now, just to let you know, we were supposed to go a bit crazy in 2019, but that was when we sort of had this intro into COVID and it got stagnated. So that legislation came in. And from 2020, we are on a curve going upwards. So you can actually see that our median days are actually very similar to Brisbane. We're actually at 14 days. And when you look at units and houses, they are tracking, with houses being obviously that asset class that just does a little bit better. Okay, Garth, on to the next one. So Garth did actually ask me, did I get this image right? And it used to sit a different way, but this is probably how it captures exactly where the market is. People say to me, like, you know, what happened? And I'm a numbers person and loved also economics. So it's always supply and demand. In WA, we are seeing 1,500 visas. And we need it because our employment is the lowest it's ever been on record. So we have a joke, if you can even get a coffee or someone to serve you a coffee, it's amazing because we just can't employ people. So we've got the migration going, but we've got that catch where the migration comes in, but they've got nowhere to stay. So we also have a very low building record. So we again are at the bottom of building approvals. So we're at the bottom of supply, and yet we have this really high demand that's coming through. So the great thing about some products is that you get this great demand, the UDI, all these wonderful things that people have come up with, and they're able to just up production. The problem with housing is we just can't up production. We've gone from being able to build a house in 9 months when builders were desperate, now to stretching out to longer periods. So we just can't meet that demand even though we want to. Next slide would be great, Garth. So looking at the numbers, I'm probably a bit similar to Samara. I stopped counting, but you know, I came into this market in the 90s, late 90s actually, and then Empire opened in 2003. So I stopped counting after 20 years. I don't want to count the grey hairs either. But when I look at my numbers, we've done all cycles. I've done the ups, I've done the downs, and that's what property investment is. It's about the ups and the downs. And at the moment, in Perth, we're still on the up. So my figures are absolutely were absolutely correct as of yesterday, but Garth is right. As of today, we did announce that our medium house price is at 600 and that our medium rent is at 550. And so therefore our medium sits at 575. Now, when you look at these figures, we started at 2017 at 345. But even when I throw out the number 600, you've got to understand that WA still remains the most affordable. We have obviously a large mining market, which means that the pays are great. You know, everyone knows about Gina Reinhardt's lovely $100,000 random bonuses that she does. So the pay rate, the mining sector, all that sort of stuff is great. And so the affordability, even though we've had this major growth, is still there in WA, which means you've got not only growth in your property price, and Pernod just talked about the fact that obviously, you know, from contracting to settlement, you've got this growth rate. And it's exactly the same in our market. You've got this growth rate that's still possible because we're not near Sydney or Melbourne pricing by a long way. Garth, next slide, if that's okay. And I'm going to try go as quickly as I can. We've also had rental reforms. WA, we're a little bit slow in WA. Everyone else did it over the last 2 years, and we just decided what our reforms are going to be. They're not coming in until 2024 because we have to go to Parliament. But what does it mean? We used to also be able to review rents every 6 months, but now it's 12. Again, very workable. It now just means that for a 12-month lease, we can factor in what that rent's going to be. Tenants will be allowed to have pets unless there are grounds otherwise. Again, as Samara said, something that we've always managed for years and years. And that we actually in WA maintain no grounds termination. So if the lease is coming to an end and you just want to do something different with the property, we have the ability to obviously terminate the lease at the end. But in WA, our reforms have not come in yet, and we're not expecting till 2024. Okay, Garth, on to the next one. Okay, so something a little bit about WA. Yes, we're a little bit slow on the board. It takes us a while to get these lovely pools next to our ocean, but we have unlimited coastline. We are an entry point to the Asian markets, and since COVID has come into effect, everybody wants our space. So it's not about the house, but even the apartment, the villa, all of those are extremely popular. The number of rentals have fallen by over 5,000 in the past 12 months. So that does mean that owners have bared through 2013, 2019, and they're cashing in. The only issue I have at the moment is that they are cashing in at a great time, but there's still a lot more to go. So again, I'm a big fan of holding those properties over time. So what's happened is that most of those people that are snapping up those properties are still your owner occupier or your Eastern States investor, someone like Pernod. So we're going to have a shortfall. It's already been mapped out of 25,200 properties from 2023 to 2027. So what are we in now? We've still got another 4 years before we can even get close to making our numbers. I've talked about it already. We still are the most affordable state, and we still have an extreme labour shortage. So it's the first time in WA's history that for every job we have, we don't even have enough unemployed people to actually fill those roles. We've got the 1,500 visa approvals per week, and that's a 1.7% population growth and 46,000 persons per annum. All of which with WA building approvals being at a historic low. Garth, next slide. I hope it indicates, because what I'm going to lead to is that this is Empire's raw stats, but in WA at the moment, we have less than 1,600 properties. So Garth, can you just go back a sec? We only have, if you can go back a slide, 1,600 properties available for rent, and yet we're getting in 46,000 people per annum. So the shortage, unfortunately, is continuing. And Garth, I'll let you go back, and I'm just going to let people see some raw stats. So this is mine, Empire. We are what you would call one office of 1,000, but we only had 9 properties available for rent last month. And I say only 9 because we're used to 25 to 30. And so these are some absolute raw stats. So of those 9 properties, we had 1,608 tenant inquiries for those 9. We had 382 tenants come in for 2 home opens. So you'll see we do 2 home opens on a property. We do a home open almost the day after we list it, and then another one the day after. And we even cap home opens. So that 382 was purely only because we cap our numbers so we can get to know who's coming through the property, and 94 applications for 9 properties. So on the converse side, you can see that for those 9 properties, there was 86 people that missed out. Unfortunately, they are the stats and we can't catch up on the numbers. Garth, on to the next one. So what does it mean for property investment in Perth? So I'm going to show you 3 properties. Thank you. They're all Garth's that have come through for us. So all of these have all occurred in the last 3 months. So the Rivervale property, that's what you'd call probably your higher end and your higher level of investment. So that is a stunning property, as you can see, just 8 Ks from the Perth CBD, and 1 K from one of our favourite places, which in WA is Optus Stadium, Burswood, Crown and everything. You would only be a couple of Ks from the CBD. So that one had a $745,000 purchase price. Now, Garth, I'm not quite sure, but when that actual building was completed, what was the actual valuer's price?
So they bought that 7 months out from completion. They valued it at $100,000 increase. So valued at 840, 845.
Yes. So that one there instantly for our owner got capital, that equity. And then we were actually able to secure a tenant at $900 per week, which at this price point means that you're actually getting a return or a yield of over 6%. The next one's also one of my favorites, and it's probably what most of our properties look like in WA. Nollamara, again, interestingly enough, this suburb borders Yokine. And I don't know if you guys know, but you've got some very famous people that live in Yokine. Bharat and his wife, I don't even know what Bharat's right, but Yokine is what we would call one of those affluent suburbs. And yet next door, you've got this 3x2 villa, 505,000 purchase price. I think we did a rental estimate of $580 per week, and then leased at $650. The next ones are my favorite because they only went on the market on the 1st of September. So we've got 3 and 4 bedroom houses. Now look at, these are great because you can see they're standalone sort of properties in a row, small complex, 12 Ks from the CBD. They range from 527,000 to 552. We put them on the 1st of September. And as of yesterday, when I did my slides, we had 16 applications ranging from 560 to 660 per week. So these are just some examples of what the quality that you get in WA and where we're looking at in tenant. And something that Samara also said is that, again, when we're looking at these applications, we're quite lucky because we're choosing from the best of the best tenants. So Garth, I'm sorry, that was my very, very expressed update on the Perth market. If there's any questions, I know that we've just gone over time, happy to answer them later.
Fantastic, Jamie. Thank you so much. And you do a fantastic job, as does Samara. So and what we do as part of our ongoing support for clients is we phone them every 3 months, 6 months, find out how their property is going. And it's always a pleasure when the properties are managed by Jamie or Samara. I say, how the property going? They say, look, we're not hearing anything. It's great. The rents comes in on the last day of the month, and then we pay out the mortgage, and I'm saying to them, that's great, because if you're hearing from the property manager often, that's normally a problem. And I say, how's the property manager performing? And they can't talk highly enough of Samara and the team at Mackwell, and the same goes for Jamie at Empire. So we work with a good team, and it's important that we have good team and everyone can kick, catch and pass. And that way we're looking after you and nurturing you. So look, we've come to the end of the presentation. We haven't had any any questions come through. We are available for any questions now or afterwards. I will be sending through a recording of the of tonight's webinar to all of the people that registered. So I think most of you have attended. There's a couple that I see didn't make it, but look, hopefully tonight, you know, the first thing I said to you is around education, and it's things like this. And as you can see at Property Powerhouse, we don't hard sell you anything. We haven't sold you one thing tonight, not a property, not a course, nothing like that. So it's all about education, and we want the right people to come on. You know, so we love helping people. I love my work, I love my job, I love helping people, and it's very rewarding. And as a business owner and getting these fantastic testimonials, Google reviews that we get, and the same for Jamie and Samara. So thank you, team, and thank you very much for Punit for your kind words. We're going to wrap it up there. Yeah, we've been running these probably probably twice a year, probably not often enough. So I'll take that and you know, look to try and next year increase maybe to 3 or 4. Try and have always intelligent speakers offering really good value. But I hope you enjoyed tonight, and thank you very much again to Jamie, to Samara, and Punit. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening. Thank you.